Hey, horror fans, this is The Week in Horror, October 6th through the 12th, the podcast that looks back at the highlights of horror entertainment 1 week at a time. I'm Floyd.
I'm JL.
I'm Eugene.
So, going into this week, now we're like 2 weeks into October, right? And it's my favorite time of the year. I absolutely love this month. So many of the people who listen love this month. And one thing that's big is coming up, because there's only a few months left in the year, but something that caught my eye, and I wanted to bring it up to you guys. And that is, there is a new Nicolas Cage movie coming out, and before you guys throw up in your mouths, Cage is coming out with a new version of The Color Out of Space, which is adapted from the H.P. Lovecraft story. Now, the story is amazing. I love the story, and it's really, really creepy. And the H.P. Lovecraft Society actually did a kind of black and white version of it that was kind of self-produced, very, very indie. They did a version of it, and that was really good. I thought it was really enjoyable. You can find that on Amazon Prime, by the way. And so now there's a big budget one coming up, and it's The Color Out of Space, starring Nicolas Cage and Joely Richardson and a few other names, produced by the same people that produced the movie Mandy, that also starred Nicolas Cage, which, in my opinion, is probably one of his best performances in years, and probably this decade so far.
Is Nicolas Cage making a comeback?
Finally? I don't know. It's almost like he found his genre, or he found like the genre that he can work in, because Nicolas Cage's training, his original training is in, pretty much his inspiration is German Expressionism. And that's where he gets his kind of like his big wide-eyed and the whole kind of like manic stuff that he does. And it played really well in Raising Arizona, because he could be really physical and really kind of goofy and, wide-eyed like that. And it played really well in Face Off.
I was going to say Face Off. Ain't it cool?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but you can see that German Expressionism come through in his performances, but I don't think he did anything. He did it better than in Mandy. Mandy was absolutely perfect, directed by the visionary director Panos Cosmatos, who also who was coming off the kind of the strength of his indie film Beyond the Black Rainbow, which was definitely cosmic horror. Mandy, not so much. Mandy was it had its roots in kind of like the love story between the Roman god Jupiter and his consort Rhea and stuff like that. There's a much bigger thing for another podcast, another time, to actually break that movie down, because it's miles deep. But The Color Out of Space is coming out, adapted from the H.P. Lovecraft film, or the H.P. Lovecraft story. And I gotta know, and it dawns on me that we have not had a lot of H.P. Lovecraft adaptations that are at least any good. There are a lot of adaptations, but none that are good, like really, really good, that are solid, and none that are definitely. And I think I can't remember the last big budget one that came through. They've mostly been small independent features that pretty much go VOD. They don't see theatrical releases. I think the last big Lovecraft-inspired one was probably in the 80s, Jeffrey Combs in the Reanimator series.
We're talking in the 80s.
Yeah, that's big time. And then there was another one that recently came out called The Void, which is definitely Lovecraft-inspired. It wasn't based on any of his works, but it was definitely a Lovecraftian cosmic horror type movie. And I thought The Void was amazing. And there's another one called Black Mountainside, which is another like super indie film, got no real marketing, but still a really, really great inspired indie film. But we just don't see him come along very often. And given the types of horror films that we talk about, we got slasher horror and sci-fi horror and all the different then you get into like the Saw films and various stuff like that. With all these different varieties of horror, why don't directors, or even let's say studio houses, why don't production companies jump on this bandwagon? Why don't they really go for broke in the cosmic horror genre? And it was kind of boggled my mind that with the technology we have today, with special effects, with the advances in CGI, in green screen, blue screen technologies, the things that we can do can translate quite well, but we still don't see it. And I have my own theories. I was kind of curious as to what you guys thought.
It's pretty interesting because the thing is, you're right in terms of like cosmic horror things. Horror being the largest genre out there, but in terms of space and sci-fi, it's. I think it's. I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it. Maybe there's just not a huge audience for that particular one, and on top of that, sometimes it's hard to translate things to another medium. Like, for example, video games. There are a lot of great video games that have a lot of great stories, but then we make them into movies, and the movies are really bad.
Assassin's Creed. Sorry.
Yeah, I feel Assassin's Creed.
You really have to cough to announce a bad video game movie? I think you can say it with no harm, no foul at this point.
But don't shit on Warcraft. I love that movie.
I didn't see it because it was a video game movie, so I was worried.
Okay.
I still think the best one's Mortal Kombat. The first Mortal Kombat movie. That's my favorite.
I honestly think the Street Fighter movie was better, and people shit all over that one all the time. So I guess, when it comes to video game movies, we can't even decide on which ones suck.
I can see Floyd over here getting a hard on when like Van Damme is like, I'm going to get into my boat. I'm going to go up Reaver.
Actually,
I'm going to find that bastard Bison and kick his ass so hard.
So hard.
So hard. It's a shame that was his last role.
Raul Julia?
Yeah, such a shame.
For me, it was Tuesday. But yeah, I think you're right as far as cosmic horror goes. But looking back at the audience wise, could we honestly say before Halloween, before 1978, 1979, John Carpenter comes out with pretty much invents the slasher film with Halloween. Mm-hmm. Okay, and could we say that there was a slasher audience? An audience for slasher horror before that movie came out. Yet people have been doing cosmic horror for so long, and but you may be right. It may be not in the audience, maybe in the translation of the material, because it's not like we see a lot of Edgar Allan Poe translations as well. Like, it's not exactly like we're not going to see Telltale Heart or oh god, the Pit and the Pendulum or the Murders in the Rue Morgue or anything like that translating over to film all that often, unless it's some wonky sci-fi, low budget thing or something that came out on TV on TNT or some shit.
Yeah, because I remember the Simpsons episode where they did The Raven, and for their the Treehouse Horror, one of their first Treehouse Horror ones many years ago, and I think that came across really well. I really liked it. But the thing is, you're right. At best, you may have very loosely inspired Edgar Allan Poe, but there's not like the Masquerade of Death or anything like that comes out. Just not.
Yeah.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head by asking, is there really a major fan base? Like, up until 10, 15 years ago, superhero movies were trash for the most part. But now the people who grew up reading comics and grew up with the technology they needed to make this stuff are the adults making movies and directing and acting in them. So they have more of a passion for them. And I think it's happening slowly but surely, because not until I did the unfinished project we worked on, JL, did I even know who H.P. Lovecraft was. Now he's on, at least one of his monsters is at the beginning of most Rick and Morty episodes. So it's getting out there. It just takes time.
So that's totally possible that as with the progression we've seen with comic book films, that as technology has improved, as people have gotten a real grasp of the storytelling, and the kind of the movie industry and the comic industry have kind of melded together, and we've been able to actually see films that are awesome, and storylines that are awesome, and acting that is awesome as people get behind them, and people believe, and the real top-notch A-list actors believe in the stories. So that makes sense. Maybe we're just not to that point with cosmic horror, because my gut instinct is that the notion of cosmic horror in the H.P. Lovecraft style. You see his inspirations in Clive Barker, you see it in Stephen King, you see it in pretty much the vast majority of any type of alien-style horror, like even, Ridley Scott took inspiration in H.R. Geiger. And so maybe it's possible that kind of existential dread, whereas in no matter if we're the hero or not, it doesn't matter, you really can never win. That you can't fight your environment. The environment is is ultimately the enemy, and you can't defeat it. You can only hope to stave it off long enough to survive, but chances are you're not going to. So ultimately, I think when Cronenberg did when Cronenberg did The Fly, okay, body horror style, okay, that was very much kind of a cosmic horror style where, this is not going to end well. There's nothing you can do. This is going to end badly no matter how it ends. Okay? Or like in Carpenter with The Thing, with his Apocalypse trilogy, with The Thing, with Prince of Darkness, I'm totally losing the third one. There are 3 films in that. The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and I'm losing.
Can't think of the third.
I'm totally losing. I'm sounding like an asshole now.
Well, see, what I'm curious about, and it's interesting that y'all brought up like superhero movies. It took a while for basically somebody to crack the formula, because you had some good ones here and there that came out, like 1989 Batman and stuff like that. But it wasn't really until, aside from Christopher Nolan's trilogy, it really wasn't until Iron Man that somebody actually cracked, this is the way a superhero movie should be.
In the Mouth of Madness. Sorry, I'm jumping in.
In the Mouth of Madness.
Sam Neill, In the Mouth of Madness. See, that was definitely Lovecraft. There. So, but yes, you're right on cracking the formula.
And so I think no one has yet, and I think once somebody does, and it could be right around the corner, but I think once somebody does and they are able to get one, it's able to be a huge blowout success. More people start turning towards this material.
Well, fingers crossed, because I really, really hope it's going to be good. I absolutely fucking loved Mandy. I thought it was a brilliant film with brilliant acting. And did you see it, Floyd?
No. Was it 10 years ago now? I had read an article that said Nicolas Cage would be popping up in several video on demand and straight to DVD movies for the next 5 to 7 years until he pays off debt. So that's when I took a break from Nicolas Cage. And here lately, it seems like he's getting back to a position where his movies are more reputable. And it's not just...
Well, I mean, he's got a movie called Pig coming out, which is about a farmer that goes on a revenge riff to get his pig back.
Oh, so he's getting his farm days John Wick.
I don't know. Okay, so I don't know, but he... maybe Mandy was lucky. Maybe that was just luck that he landed that role. Because it was like it was written for him. And the director, maybe it was the director who knew how to handle him, but it was an absolutely brilliant film. I recommend it to anybody. And then hopefully Color Out of Space, which is, has Legion M, and the people behind Mandy are also producing this. Different director, but hopefully, and I've seen a few stills online, but no trailer yet. So hopefully it will be as amazing as Mandy was. I'm 50-50 on it so far. So just, translations of cosmic horror are few and far between. So that if they're any good whatsoever, usually they end up being like, Dagon, stuff like that. That Spanish director who keeps translating or keeps adapting Lovecraftian stuff. So, hopefully, fingers crossed, it will be decent. So
we're hoping.
Definitely.
We're hoping. So, all right. So now we'll go into our first movie. And this one actually debuted October 6, 2006. And it's one of the last films in a long-running franchise, right? Starring Jordana Brewster. And it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning.
Oh, that was the prequel to the Jessica Biel one, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. The one. Yeah, it takes place in 1969. And it was directed by Jonathan Liebman, if I can pronounce that correctly. But it was produced by Michael Bay and Tobe Hooper. So they were involved with it also. Tobe Hooper from the original one, and then Michael Bay just being Michael Bay.
Oh, because Michael Bay went on that kick where he was behind the Friday the 13th reboot as well.
Yeah, I think he was trying his hand in horror for a little while, and
Yeah.
then went back to explosions.
Oh, but even the Friday the 13th remake had an explosion in it. We couldn't get out of that movie without an explosion. It was
Did we get some lymphat
so like,
flares?
oh my god, are we going to get through a Michael Bay produced film with no big fireballs? Nope. Right at the end, 5 minutes to the end, there's an explosion. It's like great.
I felt like that was added in post production. Like they cut the film, and then Michael Bay's like, you know what? It's missing something. Let me go film something real quick.
Signature motherfuckers.
Motherfucking money.
Yes, I've seen that. I've seen that rap battle.
America.
Oh, but in that in the Jordana Brewster one, that one ended up down. She didn't survive that. Like, I don't think anybody survived that film.
Yeah, it's one of the very few like slasher films where the final girl dies, kind of thing. Yeah, where Leatherface pops up in the back seat, like she gets in the car and she thinks she's all safe, and she sees some police officers up ahead of her. Then Leatherface pops up and then runs a chainsaw through the back of the seat, kind of thing. To me, in terms of a lot of like the kills in the movie were well executed. The one thing that was missing about that movie was because it's a prequel, we already know that everybody from the family is going to live. So it's like every time when you see I can't remember his name, he's punching R.E. Emery in the face, and you're like, oh, is he finally going to get him? Well, we know R.E. Emery's going to survive because he's in the Jessica Biel one.
Yes, because they answered the question in the Jessica Biel one, he knocked that one guy's teeth out. And then he flaunted the fact that he himself had fake teeth as well.
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh, look, I got fake teeth too." Yeah, I was like, I lost my teeth. And then the prequel answered how he lost those teeth.
And
because
it's not only the fact that you know who's gonna live because they're in the original or whatnot. It's the fact that you immediately know who's probably gonna die. All right, you're a part of the family, but you're not in the sequel, so you're going to die, and you weren't there, so you're going to die. Just how long is it going to take before you die is the question.
And that's kind of how I felt. The one thing I did like about the movie, though, is that it explained how he became Officer Holt, kind of thing. Okay. Because, in the Jessica Biel one, it's like, how can this guy be a sheriff? And he's like this crazy, and he's this messed up, and okay, well, he's a bad guy. And it's kind of interesting that he killed the only sheriff in town, then put the uniform on and just pretended to be a sheriff. I thought that was kind of interesting. So it kind of explains where he gets that from.
So, formulaic wise, given this is a prequel, and a Jordana Brewster vehicle. Yeah, I think at that point she was kind of coming back strong with the Fast and Furious series. And all of a sudden, she started, taking on bigger and stronger roles. So she's the final girl. Not really a final girl in this film, but with a formula that gives us a film where we pretty much know who's going to die, we know who's not going to die, and we have some tidbit treats that kind of link back to the Jessica Biel one, to the reboot. So it's like, oh, cool, that's cool. That's a throwback. That's a throwback. And it's like, okay, it kind of answers that question. So, is it necessary, or fan service, or just because personally I didn't see the point of the movie originally. I felt it was more of a, we have the rights to it. These kind of horror films always make money every few years. So, and while the actors will do their best to put out a good performance and like that, because of that kind of formula breakdown where it's like, it was kind of obvious. It was like, it kind of took it away. There was no kind of it was just, there was fan service, yes, but it really kind of took away from the whole oh, it's a horror film, it's it's happening. It didn't have those beats for me.
Yeah, and also at that time when it came out in 2006, prequels were a big deal. And so it's like, okay, well, not necessarily with, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that genre. Going back to what I was saying, at the time, prequels were a big thing. People kept riding that wave. Oh, well, obviously the audience wants to know where this came from. And I felt like a lot of the prequels that came out at the time weren't necessary. I would have rather just see a regular Texas Chainsaw Massacre, just another movie.
A continuation
something
of the
that takes
story.
place afterwards.
Yeah, continue.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like at the beginning of the film, I know that they did like the birth scene, like how Leatherface was born, and that whole situation. The girl dies giving birth to him at the slaughterhouse, and they dispose of her body, and then the baby's still alive. That whole kind of thing, but he's all fucked up. I remember they explained that, like they added that to it, and I was like, okay, so we got new information, but beyond that, it's kind of like, okay, so we know he's gonna live, and okay, so we got these. So it did kind of ride the wave of the sequel prequel wave that was going through in the mid aughts.
Yeah, it definitely did. It, like I said, it has its moments. Some of the practical effects in the film are really good. I did watch a couple of behind the scenes stuff, how they did some of the makeup effects, like when the boyfriend gets chainsawed through the table and stuff like that.
That was pretty cool.
So yeah, and they combined two shots. So they had a fake torso that they filled with blood and guts, and they ran a chainsaw through it, and they superimposed it with another table that actually had his real head. And then putting those two shots together, you got the effect that they had in the film. So, like, it had some really good practical effects. It had some really good kills, right? Especially, was it the brother at the very end where Leatherface runs a chainsaw through his back and picks him up?
Yeah, and then does like the pose up there.
Yeah, like it was like, okay, that was really cool. But other than that, I never felt like the film was necessary.
The thing that took me out of it is like, okay, I get that he's doing this, and and there was some good realism there when she was hiding from him in the in I guess that barn area, the slaughterhouse. She's like hiding from him, and she actually manages to wound him and get away. And then but then he winds up in the car. I don't know, he villainous teleports. I have no idea. I thought that was a Jason only thing, but okay, I've done manual labor. I've worked with chainsaws, and the fact that, if you imagine, the girl's sitting in the front seat of the car, he pops up in the back. He does not grab her, but he has time to pull that chainsaw ripcord, and as big as that fucker was, because that was a big dude, okay?
Yeah.
And that was a big chainsaw, okay? So he's got the arm space to pull that cord. That thing started on a dime, okay? And stab her, and have the leverage to stab her with it all the way through in the front seat. I was kind of like, really? Have you ever met a pull cord thing that starts on the first shot?
No.
I was fixing to say, like, that had to be the best manufactured chainsaw ever in the history of chainsaws.
Well, I guess he would have to get the best if he was going to be doing this as a continuous thing.
This is true, but it's like, but only in the most tense moments does the chainsaw not start.
We're subverting expectations, that's all.
He has difficulty with it. He's like, oh, why won't this fucking thing start? Oh, but right here in this car, when it's the worst possible position, I need to pull this cord to pull it. Boom! I just tug, and it just comes to life. And it's like, really? Okay.
Just accidentally turns it on.
Can you imagine, like, if it didn't? Like, she's driving a car and he pops up and he starts like trying to like rev it, and she's just driving, and he's just like, hang on 1 second, hang on, go, no, trust me, I can get it up, trust me.
Oh
trust
shit,
me,
I'm out of fucking gas.
I swear this is the first time this has happened.
And she's like, it's okay, it happens to everybody.
And now we're getting into scary movie territory.
It's such an easy transition, you one minute you're making a classic, the next minute somebody's farting through a window or something, and your movie's a parody now.
Do you know where I am? Yeah, you're hiding behind the couch. What? Oh, what? No.
Yeah.
Well, I can see your feet behind the curtain.
All right, well, also, and it's amazing because this is why I love October. But our next film is still in the same franchise. Only this one came out before. It was October 7th, 1994. And this was Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. And now I actually do hold some love for this film, as terrible as it was. It wasn't Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 with, I think Dennis Hopper, where that was just ridiculous. But in Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation, this is the one that had Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey in it. And
yes,
it also had what a lot of people didn't know is it actually had cameos, uncredited cameos of actors from Tobe Hooper's original back in the 70s. And I thought that was rather impressive. But the film itself obviously was trying to capitalize on the shock value, because this was early 90s, and it had been a minute since a Chainsaw Massacre film had been out, but it was pure shock value. And I think the only thing good we got out of it was Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey as kind of the beginnings of their career, towards the beginnings of their career.
And what was interesting about that was, so they went and they filmed the movie and they edited it and they shelved it, and they were just going to leave it on the shelf. And then Renee Zellweger hit big with Jerry Maguire, and that's when it got released. And Matthew McConaughey's agents actually tried to fight the production company from releasing it, and obviously they lost the battle, and it got released. Yeah. Kind of thing. There are a couple of different versions of it. So you have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation, which was a theatrical release. There's also a director's cut called Return to Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's right.
Yeah, they're both shit, but they tried.
Okay. Well, you gotta give like that, because Matthew McConaughey was off the fucking hook. That dude can play a crazy person. Okay.
Oh yeah.
He went off the rails, and I like the fact that Oscar winner, Dallas Buyers Club, Wolf of Wall Street, the awesome shit he's doing like that. But then he occasionally turns into performance like Reign of Fire, where he just kind of like goes all character driven like that. But this one, he sunk his teeth into this role, and I think it's because it's early in his career, and he's kind of like I really want to prove myself, and he really went for broke with the manic weirdness in this one. But I thought that I still kind of find the movie entertaining. I liked the fact that Marilyn Burns and Paul Partain and John Dugan, all from the original Tobe Hooper one, they all showed up and got little parts in it. And did you know that WWE, or actually WWF at the time, WWF diva Deborah was in this movie?
Oh man, I'm trying to remember.
What did she do?
Damn.
Oh, she had a tiny little thing. Who the heck was she? She was one of the cops when they go to Bud's Pizza Place.
Deborah.
Oh yeah, the pizza deliveries, or yeah, when they go, she picks up the pizzas from the drive-thru.
Yeah. And what's funny is that John Dugan was also a cop in that movie as well, and he was the cop who was at the hospital. So, but yeah, WWF diva Deborah was in this film. So a lot of tiny little things that make it kind of special. It's not obviously not a great movie, but a lot of fun for real big fans of it. And you get to see some wacky Matthew McConaughey stuff that he doesn't do anymore.
Yeah, because he comes across as his performance. I'm like, I don't know how the director could like rein him in or control him on set, because he looks like he dives into it 100%. I wouldn't mind seeing him in another horror movie playing maybe a crazy maniac or something like that now. I think that would be fantastic. Matthew McConaughey, if you're listening, maybe, work something out.
I mean, Killer Joe was good, but that's just, I think that's just Matthew McConaughey without weed and on a really bad day.
Yeah. He just ran out of weed or something like that, and someone ruined him on the way to work or something.
Oh, but good times for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There's a lot in that series.
Yes.
Oh, there is.
Indeed, there is. Maybe we just need to bury that series and let it just die. just let it go by the wayside. It's had its good times, it's had its bad times, but you're making prequels on remakes, and it's just like, get it together, guys.
Yeah, when you find yourself rebooting your series multiple times, kind of thing, and you keep failing multiple times, maybe just let it walk off into the sunset.
Maybe take old boy out back and
Oh, old Yeller.
go ahead and dig him a nice little plot, and that'll be his grave. Speaking of graves, if it is my turn, I had the pleasure of dealing with the October 8th, 2010 remake of a great movie called I Spit on Your Grave.
Oh, damn. I remember the original of this super controversial film at the time.
Oh, I feel the same way about it right now. But it stars Sarah Butler as Jennifer, our protagonist, if you can even call her that.
Anti-hero?
Our
Really?
victim who turns hero. I don't know. It also stars Jeff Branson and Andrew Howard. Andrew Howard was the main person I thought I knew while watching it. That's because he was the gangster in Limitless with Bradley Cooper. And that's one of the main places I've seen him, but he seems like a guy who's been around the block a time or two, and this was another stop, a good one. I'd heard of this movie a while back and didn't get a chance to actually view it, mainly because I'm big on judging a book by its cover, and the cover art for this movie is a girl's ass. So I didn't really think it was going to be that great. But I did get a chance.
A girl's ass and a 12-inch blade.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true, but it just seems like not even B level when I see it. Now, after watching the movie, I have to say there's a lot of layers to this bad boy, if I'm being honest. You start the movie out with the typical scary movie, driving to a cabin in the woods. She's by herself. She's a writer, and she runs into these guys who are kind of creepy. Obviously, one of them hits on her. All typical stuff. Until you get to the point where you have to question the quality of the movie. And hear me out. When they actually break in to do their dirty work with her, her acting is a little bit suspicious to me. And because I didn't read the full synopsis, because I've gotten used to just watching a movie and enjoying it as it happens, knowing that it was horror was good enough for me. Not knowing how it was going to happen was pretty exciting. So when they burst in and she's kind of acting all timid, it almost seems as though, based on her acting selections, that she was very well trained in handling herself and she was just playing along until she got an opportunity. That sadly was not the case. This movie doesn't really skimp on the aggressiveness of a young woman being raped, I guess is the best way to put it. So you experience it with her. And a lot of the scary parts to the movie are actually you just wondering not when it's going to happen, but how. Because they're clearly have bad intentions for her. At one point she escapes and gets to a cop. And sure enough, just like in a lot of these movies, it kind of fell back into the trope of he's actually not a good cop. So he turns out to be the worst one of them all. And they do some pretty heinous stuff to her that I didn't think I would end up seeing, but they play it all out so you can actually experience her fear and anxiety. And then it's a really good payoff when she comes back and handles her business. So I really enjoyed it.
That kind of stuff was one of the things that kind of drove people out of the theaters when the original came out. Because you imagine that the context of that subject, okay, how taboo it was, and I think this original was what 1978,
I think
or
79,
or so was it 74,
something like that.
Yeah, so you're talking about the 1970s, okay, and something like this comes out, and we're talking, it's not just sexual assault, it's not just aggressive, male sexual behavior, and then it all kind of happens off screen. Where it's like, oh, we know what's happening. Well, we can imagine what's happening. They shot this like legit, and it drove people out of theaters. The original was banned in some countries. It was so shocking in that respect, and I don't know if it plays the same nowadays. To modern audience, I would say audiences today in this millennial generation. If it would still play with the same kind of energy, but it's still, since it's so, ever since the Me Too movement and like that, something like this, I don't think we've seen any movies like this come around since the beginning of the Me Too movement or anything like that. So
no,
is it the taboo nature of it that maybe it's the taboo nature of what it is that kind of helps that go along?
And I think something especially with our country, sex is still kind of this hush thing that a lot of people don't like to talk about.
Oh, that's the
Uh,
real horror, is how deep the puritanical influence is, even in 2019 in this country.
oh yeah, I mean we were talking about stuff that was inspired by the Victorian era during the 1800s. How and so anything that's related to sex, and especially something as violent as rape, you don't like to talk about it. Even in most horror movies, it's either hinted, it's off
Mm-hmm.
screen.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the beginning, what we were talking about, it's kind of a rape feel, and you see Ari Emery get on top of her, and then it cuts to the outside of the house, and you just hear her scream.
So
So
yeah,
like, even in horror, it's something that is not shown very.
oh yeah, like in Wrong Turn, like the Wrong Turn films. Like we know that they're kidnapping women and they're breeding with them, or the Hills Have Eyes. So like that, where it's the gore and the violence that comes that is definitely that takes center stage, but the gruesome nature of monsters using regular people for using victims for breeding stock, that never really comes to the forefront. So it's the rape and revenge motif is definitely its own kind of horror itself.
Absolutely. 'Cause I watched the TV show Sopranos recently, which is a very good show. Even though it's not horror, it's a good show. And there was a rape scene in that. I remember, so many people die on that show,
Oh
and
yeah.
so many people die in so many horrific ways. But that rape scene stood out to me, kind of
You
thing.
think it has
It
something to do
sticks
with
with
like
you.
desensitization? Like we see violence all the time, whether it be video games, movies. I'm more willing to watch a Saw movie than I am a love story, and that's because I don't have to deal with Saw in real life, so it's kind of a fantasy to see that. But if I saw like a real video of that stuff, I'd probably throw up. So I know it's fake. I can disconnect and not have to deal with it. But then you get to like Pride and Prejudice or really emotional movies where there's a lot of love, and it just makes me feel icky. So this one could be on the same token. It's rape. We know it happens, but I just don't want to deal with it. So while watching it, I have this uncomfortable feeling about her safety. And then towards the end of the movie, you all of a sudden have an uncomfortable feeling about the guys who raped her. And it's like, well, I don't feel sorry for what's happening to you, but man, she's going pretty far. So this must what it feels like to be violated in that manner. It makes you want to do things you never considered possibly doing.
Yeah, because she's just like her, just a regular
Yeah.
girl, kind of thing. Just that was it. Just any girl can relate to her.
I cannot relate to any of those guys. I just want to say that.
It's like there was a thriller that came out. It was in '86 that kind of played off this trope. See, there's not that many that go off it. I mean, that I think it was Extremities. Came out in '86 with Farrah Fawcett. How a guy breaks into her house and attacks her, and she manages to turn the tables and tries to. I think he raped her. Or he attempted to rape her, and then she winds up turning the tables on him and capturing him, and then like torturing the living shit out of him for almost the entirety of the movie. She like maces him with bug spray, and she like locks him in the fireplace and just kind of pins him there, and he can't escape. And she just relentlessly tortures this cat for like a long time. And it's a brutal film, but also very difficult to watch in some respects. And so maybe the roots are in still the unrelenting taboo nature of sex, and how it's so ingrained in us as humans. It's so important to the species, but the puritanical nature of our society, it really kind of flies in the face of that and makes us extremely uncomfortable to watch this. My wife is currently doing her 31 Days of Horror, where she watches a new horror film every single day for the month of October, and she watched Apartment 407. And Apartment 407 is it has horror elements. It's listed kind of as a horror, but I think it's more of a thriller. But it's actually based on the true story of a girl who was a model who was tricked into thinking she was going to a photo shoot and wound up getting drugged and kidnapped, and for like 5 days was basically sold into sex slavery. And she was raped repeatedly, and then only by virtue of her captor leaving a door unlocked, she escaped. And what's twisted about this in this movie is that the lead actress who plays the character who gets kidnapped, this actually happened to her in real life. So the lead actress was starring in a movie that was retelling the events of what actually happened to her.
I can't imagine filming
Yeah,
stuff like that.
I watched it with her while I was doing prep here, and it's brutal, and that was a difficult film to watch. Surprisingly, difficult because the rape scenes were very visceral, and then you have like Straw Dogs, which is the same kind of like revenge kind of film like that. So, and they don't come around often, but maybe it is just, it's still the taboo nature of our country, of America.
Yeah, I think it is. What is it? One of the Last House on the Left?
Oh,
Original?
Last House on the Left. Yep.
Yeah. Kind of thing. Yeah, it's something that is just, maybe it needs to be talked about more. I'm not necessarily saying it needs to be shown on film more, but maybe talked about more or something like that, because this is stuff that really does happen, and it's brutal. It really is.
It may be that we feel like we're forced to look at reality. It's like, if you it's like virtually no different, because hockey mask killer, guy in white William Shatner mask, or a guy who kills you in your dreams, or you open up a puzzle box and demons come out. Totally you can separate yourself from those. They're easily compartmentalized. You can easily suspend your disbelief, and you can break away because it's not real. Okay, but
it's not going to happen.
But the moment you add a middle-aged country white boy into a movie killing people with no mask and no motive, you all of a sudden got yourself a realistic movie, apparently.
Yes. Like I have a friend.
That's so sad.
One of our other audio guys, John Windsor, he watches horror, but he does not watch home invasion, like home invasion flicks, because that's some real shit. There's nothing supernatural about it. It's like, no, bad guys broke into your home and they're doing horrible shit to you. Whether they're trying to steal from you or whether they're just looking like he couldn't watch The Strangers. He couldn't watch one of my favorites, You're Next.
Oh yeah,
I loved You're Next. So I mean, he can't watch that stuff like that because it's just too real. And I think I Spit on Your Grave. While I don't know if a reboot, because I know it got like 2 more sequels. And I think there was like, I don't know, it was a Spit on Your Grave 2 and Spit on Your Grave 3. I think it turned into like a trilogy, but I don't know if it needed a reboot, but maybe it did. Maybe it was something that needs to be brought to the forefront, and people need to occasionally see this kind of stuff. And it may be uncomfortable, but it's a reminder that this kind of horror is legitimate and it happens.
Yeah, and one thing we didn't mention is the idea with the Me Too movement. We've had a lot of fakers who lead to more and more people in society saying, oh, see, I told you women be out here faking this. But I don't care if 9 out of 10 fake it. If this that I witnessed on I Spit on Your Grave happens to 1, then that sucks. I mean, guys, don't mess around with foolish girls who are going to lie on you, but at the same time, don't be out here beating women up. This is just not cool, man. Jeez.
Yeah, because then they're going to come back and they're going to cut your fucking balls off.
Yeah, leave you hanging in some weird, for a second,
in the,
when she had
in the woods,
guy tied to the tree and her
with your fucking eyelids pulled up with fish hooks.
No, thank you. With fish guts rubbed into them so the birds would come. But when she was first dealing with the big guy and his buddy who was playing the ukulele or whatever the thing is, I kind of thought she's gonna mess with these guys. And she had already gotten Matthew, the mentally challenged guy, and choked him out. She's going to put them in a position where it looks like they were in here having a male orgy, and they all die from asphyxiation. And then just leave them like that. And then send the video of them raping her.
Let the coroner explain this to their mothers.
Right? They just couldn't get enough from raping a woman, so they started raping each other in a circle.
Oh man, I'm drunk. Feeling kind of rapey right now.
Goodness. I guess just for the record, I've never wanted to be physically intimate with anyone who didn't want it from me. So it boggles the mind how guys can fight through that. If she don't want it, then it's just, do you have some kind of like, I don't know. I just don't understand the mindset.
We are.
I don't either.
It does force us to look at that broken nature. Whereas we can call it broken because we don't see that. Whereas I guess you'd say the respect for for females, the respect for their bodies, respect for them as people, is just ingrained in the vast majority of the population. But there is that subsect of the population where that connection just isn't made. Just broken individuals or distorted individuals with distorted worldviews, or they're mentally ill, or they're so just emotionally or psychologically broken that this is how they empower themselves in any way that they can, and that these people exist. They're walking amongst us as we speak.
And it's one thing, an interesting aspect that you bring up, that's a power thing, because you take say like rape in prison, and a lot of the men that commit it aren't necessarily like homosexual, but they like the power aspect. They like controlling somebody.
Absolutely.
Kind of
and I think that comes in the joy. That brings in the kind of like the enjoyment of the horror film, is obviously seeing the tables turned, is seeing the woman re-empower herself, obviously through gratuitous violence. Yes. And typically we don't say, hey, ladies, if this terrible tragedy, this tragic event occurs, if someone violates you, obviously, don't go apeshit bananas, bloodthirsty, crazy on them, as much as you would like to. But it is seeing the tables turned. It is seeing the reversal of fortune, the re-empowerment of the woman taking her power back from her would-be, from her victimizers. So, and I think that kind of markets it a bit. People want to see that, just how, and I think it comes down to how creative our hero or anti-hero, I use that term very loosely, how creative she can be as far as exacting her revenge. But then at a point, I think, and it's worth discussing at some point, is where does she cross the line where she becomes as bad as her attackers? Or does she become as bad? Huh?
When she waited a whole month to attack him?
Well, she had to come up with a plan. And it was like, but at what point does she become as bad, or if not worse than her attackers? Are her attackers deserving of that?
Well, I think that's kind of the point in the end. Like, you guys have messed me over so bad, my life will never be the same. I probably can't really be intimate with a man for a while. Can't have a boyfriend because I have to worry that guys who seem somewhat normal are going to screw me over like this. All the while, I'm not going to live a normal life. I can't come back out to the woods to do anything. You've taken a lot of my personal freedoms that we take for granted at first. You've relieved me of those, so I'm going to show you as close as possible what that feels like.
And so, as much as we enjoy it, the fantasy of getting the one over on our victimizers, the underdogs getting the revenge or getting their justice in that respect. But it deserves, I think, it's more a commentary. It's more of a social commentary in that respect, and why it makes people so uncomfortable watching it. Why it's so disconcerting watching is because it really asks you, like, where do you fall in this spectrum? Okay, that's the horror. And then you got that. So you're talking about a kind of like a brilliant aspect of the horror film where it's up there. It's gruesome. It's horrifying. It's like, oh my god, this is so terrifying. But it really forces you. Unlike other horror films, Texas Chainsaw Massacre doesn't ask you if you like to eat people. Okay.
Yep.
Hannibal Lecter didn't ask you, if you like to do it. Stuff like that. But this one asks you, where do you fall in the spectrum? Do you back her? Do you sympathize with her attackers? Do you believe this is equal justice? Is she worse than them? Is she, all this stuff? And I think it really is a litmus test for the character of people that, their response to it. And it's really creepy where you can fall, because some people, I've talked to people who watched the film and have blamed her the whole time. Because she knew where she was going. She knew what she was doing. She went out there alone, and she didn't do everything she could. In that, kind of like how you said you weren't really sure if she was kind of playing the timid deal, where she was kind of playing into it. She didn't want to, piss these guys. Some people saying she wasn't trying to piss them off. She wasn't trying to antagonize the situation. Some people saying, oh, she was kind of turned on by it. She was, about the thought of it. But then when it got too real, she kind of wanted to back out. There are people who legitimately watch this movie and blame her, and they consider her the villain. Because then she's so unhappy and so displeased with herself that she takes it out on her would-be attackers.
And what's interesting about that mindset is that rape is the only crime that we blame the victim. when it comes with murder, when it comes with breaking and entering and all this other kind of stuff, if you leave your front door open and somebody breaks in, it's, oh, well, that criminal did this, that criminal did that. No one says, well, your house was asking for it. You left your door unlocked, your house was asking for it. Like, no one says anything like that. And it's a shame that people have that mindset, that victim shaming.
I think that goes back to the idea that and it's not nearly enough, I don't think. Not enough of them get reported from my understanding. So there's way more happening that we actually hear about because of the shame factor and the embarrassment. But then at the same token, people trying to say, oh, you set yourself up for that. I am of the belief that men and women can be friends once a certain level of maturity is reached. Prior to that level of maturity, anytime a man is hanging out with a woman, it's probably because he finds her attractive. And if proposed with the right opportunity, he would take the chance to have physical relations with her. That does not A-OK the idea of raping a woman. I'm just saying there's a lot of intricate details that go into this that also affect it negatively to where women end up getting blamed somehow for a guy who didn't know when no meant no. Like, that was what we were taught coming up in the 90s. No means no.
No means no.
I'm not sure. Now you got to have consent for everything. If she's buzzed, you're raping her no matter what.
It's a brutal little film that I think warrants real self-awareness when walking. And I think the reason people find these things so unnerving is not as much the act, but as much as what it says about themselves and what they take away from it. And I think that's why movies like I Spit in Your Grave, like Straw Dogs, like like Extremities, really push people to the limits and draw lines in the sand, determining who they are, how they would react, who they blame. And that's why they're so scary in that respect, because they're mirrors. They're mirrors on us.
And I hate to
they tell you something about yourself.
I hate to do
some of the
it,
best horror.
But we forgot to mention that the cop is one of the main people. You'd be like, well, what if you had a daughter? What if somebody did this to your child? And then sure enough, shortly after they finish doing what they did to the main character, Jennifer, he goes home and you see that his wife is pregnant with a child and he has about a 10-year-old daughter, and he was still out in the woods doing something like this. And sure enough, he begs and pleads, oh, she's an innocent little girl, don't do this, don't. And it's like, dude, how can I even listen to your pleas for mercy about your daughter when you were actually doing this to somebody else's daughter with no problem, and you blamed her? Oh, you're a city girl, you're a little city this. And it's like, geez, you blamed her because she didn't grow up in the country and she's a semi-decent female? How much rejection have you faced, sir? Who hurt you, sir? Okay.
You just reminded me of a Lucky McKee directed film called The Woman. Mm-hmm. That was it. I actually had a chance to screen that when I was working for Cinelinks.com, and I had an opportunity to screen that film at Texas Frightmare Weekend, and that was a brutal movie that dealt with many of the same topics, but not just rape and kidnapping and confinement and but also spousal abuse, Stockholm syndrome, behavioral conditioning, negative behavioral conditioning. Wow. It was a brutally rough film. It's based on a story by Jack Ketchum, who apparently for some reason that author liked to write a lot about this kind of shit. So, but yeah, that one's a very, very difficult movie to sit through. It was called The Woman, and that came out some time ago, but along those same lines. So, but yes, heady topic. Heady discussion.
heavy topic. I was trying to figure out a segue into this next film, because it's the exact opposite of super heavy. there's just not a way.
We need a laugh. We got too deep. We're in too deep.
So let me pull everybody out real quick. So the next movie we're going to talk about is started, I think it's tied for the longest franchise, the franchise with the most amount of movies. Along with, it's tied with, I think, Friday the 13th. And it's a little gem that came out October 12th, 1989, with a lot of stop motion animation and some good cheesy effects.
This fucking movie.
the movie Puppet Master.
Yes. This series is so awesome. It's so delightfully bad.
I mean, I'm watching it like when you watch Child's Play and you have like a 5-year-old kid fighting a doll, and it makes sense that they can struggle because the kid's like 5 or 6 and the doll's the same size, so it makes sense that he can struggle. But when you have a grown adult that picks up something that's maybe 8 inches tall and they're struggling to fight with it, and I'm like, I watch the movie, I'm like, well, just rip his head off. But instead, you just chunk it, and then it grabs you again. You chunk it, and then it like runs a drill through your face or something like that.
Gee,
they're so fucking strong. Now, I grew up watching this because the first one came out. I was 9 years old when this first movie came out, and they tried really hard to be a legit horror film. And it is kind of creepy, doing the whole because in the vein of like Dolls or Mommy Dearest or Dolly Dearest or shit like that. Troll. But with the dolls running around, possessed dolls, that whole kind of thing. Because I think this was a couple years after Child's Play came out. I think Child's Play came out 87 or 88. And
somewhere around there. I knew it was afterwards.
But as far as the franchise goes, because everyone's got their favorite puppet. My favorite one is I actually like Pinhead. Is one of my favorites, and there's a reason behind it. Because I would imagine not a lot of people would think that Pinhead was my favorite. Floyd, in this series, what is your favorite puppet?
Oh man, there are a lot, and I haven't seen the movies in quite some time. But I'm a fan of the original Puppet Master. Just something about that old school animation. I don't even care about which puppet. It's just funny. It's one of those. Am I supposed to be scared? I mean, I kind of am, but I'm not 100% sure if you guys are serious, and I don't want to be scared if you're not serious.
Floyd doesn't want to admit that the Leech Lady was his favorite.
Oh, Leech Lady.
Oh, that was so creepy. Oh.
And what about you, Eugene? What's your favorite one?
See, I have to me, the coolest looking one was the one that had the blade hand.
Was Blade? Yep.
Yeah, Blade. The funniest one was the one that had it had like the man hands, the giant fists.
Yeah, that's Pinhead, because he has a little Pinhead head and the giant hands. Yes.
Yeah, because you'll see him like in stop motion run, and he goes and tries like to choke her, and you can tell it's real hands that are around her neck. And then she throws the doll off, and it's like doll hands again.
You see, and I like Pinhead, although when it came out, because it wasn't until Part 5, which was, I believe, Puppet Master: Axis of Evil, when it went into, I believe it went into Andre Toulon. Andre Toulon was the evil puppet master that reanimated these things. But it actually goes into his backstory and explains how all of this happened. And of all 12 of the movies, including like Puppet Master versus Demonic Toys, of all of them, that one, I believe, 5, in my opinion, 5 was the best, because it went into Toulon's backstory that he was a puppet master who handcrafted his puppets, but it was during World War II, and I believe he himself was Jewish, and he had many friends Jews who were killed by the Nazis, and it was their souls that he was transferring into these puppets through this Egyptian spell that he had picked up. And so when you find out, because you've been through like 4 films so far, and you've got Blade, and you've got Leech Woman, and you've got Pinhead, and I think there was oh god, there's so many. But at this point, you begin to understand. And then it was in 5, it showed the origins of Blade, the origins of the original ones, and then of course there was the drill head one, and there was a flamethrower one as well, and then 6-shooter, which is the one with the they had the 6 arms, and each arm had a gun.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
And so it showed the origins of these original puppets, and each puppet is a soul. It has the vengeful soul of one of his friends, and then Leech Woman is the vengeful soul of his wife, who died to the Nazis. Yeah. And then eventually, because then it starts out, because when the series starts, and it's like, I think in the first 2, is that the puppets are trying to resurrect Toulon. is that he's been dead. They're trying to bring their master back from the grave, and eventually they do. And he's like, they go to the whole zombie thing. But 5 actually was somewhat poignant. It had it's just like, oh, we understand it's a supernatural thing, but he was using these puppets originally to exact vengeance against the Nazis who murdered his friends and family. And I thought that was the most, and it was the biggest departure from the series as far as campy schlock, animated puppet horror in that respect. And that's still my favorite of the franchise.
Yeah, because it ties it into something that's real. When you think about like the Holocaust and the survivors and the people who lost family members and stuff like that, it just makes it real.
I try not to think about those things. It's really sad.
Actually, I think it was Puppet Master 6. I think it was 6 was the Axis of Evil. I think it was 6. I think there were 5 films before that. It was wild, but yeah, absolutely, just my absolute favorite. I thought it was really, really good. And then of course they got the most recent one that I think just recently came out called The Littlest Reich. So I don't know. It's I think it's gone above and beyond, considering it's tied Friday the 13th with number of entries.
It's funny because I have a buddy of mine. He did the sound for Puppet Master, Littlest Reich kind of thing, and so he was telling us just a couple of like experiences and stuff like that. And he showed us a trailer for. I haven't seen the actual film. He showed us a trailer, and we talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre maybe needing to be put out the pasture. Puppet Master might, need to
Don't
be
you dare.
put out there also.
Don't you dare. No.
I think Puppet Master needed to be put out to pasture when they did Puppet Master versus Demonic Toys. That was and Demonic Toys that's technically a trilogy because it's Demonic Toys, Puppet Master versus Demonic Toys, and then Demonic Toys versus Doll Man. Wow. So
way to build a franchise there.
I know, right? Doll Man.
Now there was I follow this little channel on YouTube called Horror Timelines, and he's kind of expanding on what he does. But when I first found it, it was all about just connecting horror movies that are a series. So he would go through and like do all the Jason movies and see if they match up as far as between movies and the dates when stuff's supposed to happen. I did refresh on Puppet Master a few months ago just because it was something he had posted in lieu of the new Puppet Master coming out. And it's pretty good continuity. He did speak on, I guess, 5 or 6, the one you were talking about, JL, where he goes back and it shows the origin. And he talks about whether or not it adds up and which movies are fit with the canon and which ones are just kind of crazy. So it's a nice history of the movies to see how each director and each writer team came together to try and make these movies make sense while still being as goofy as they are.
Wow. This is on YouTube?
Yeah, it's just called Horror Timelines.
Okay. A YouTube series about a guy who's who takes a hard look at horror chronology.
Yes.
Horror franchise chronology. That is a Sisyphean task if I ever fucking heard one.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
Oh, and he takes sub recommendations, which makes it even better because he'll end up watching like some movies that have 6 in the series and they're all just terrible. He's like, yep, no continuity here, no real reason to watch this movie.
Somebody needs to recommend Ginger Dead Man to this guy. The Gary Busey brilliance that is a gingerbread man cookie possessed by the soul of a serial killer.
Nice.
And that serial killer is Gary Busey. So it's literally this gingerbread man that's Gary Busey's voice running around stabbing the fuck out of people. It's fucking... It
sounds like the way you described it, it sounds like one of those fake movies where they're like, say it's like TV show that they work in the movie business and they're like, oh, I'm going to do this next movie. Gary Busey playing a gingerbread man killing people.
This is like fucking Rutger Hauer in Hobo with a Shotgun in that fake trailer, but the trailer was so good that they had to make it into a movie. Get this. There's a gingerbread man and he's a cookie, and then he gets his soul transferred into him by this serial killer because there's like this lightning storm that strikes the bakery that he's hiding out in from the cops, and then the gingerbread cookie goes on a killing spree and it's the voice of Gary Busey and it's fucking crazy. This is going to make millions. No, it will not make millions.
Dude, seriously, It's going to make millions. We got Gary Busey.
It's Gary fucking Busey.
Gary Busey already signed on.
Yeah, we got a few others
hysterical.
in the pipeline who might sign on, but nothing concrete.
This is a fucking trilogy. There are 3 of these movies. Ginger Dead Man 1, 2, and 3. He got a fucking trilogy out of this shit.
Savage.
You know what? My whole thinking is this: if they can make a Birdemic 2, anything can get.
But we still haven't gotten a Rubber 2.
We have not, though.
Because we desperately need a Rubber 2. I need to see the continuing story of that fucking tire.
That tire rolling down the highway, blowing people up.
That telekinetically blows up people's heads. So brilliant.
That is
good times.
That is
good
grand.
times. All right.
Somebody sat in a pitch meeting and actually sold that to somebody.
Someone said this. We don't need to have this conversation. How I couldn't sell a fucking movie about a girl trapped in a house with an alligator, and then like 3 years later, they're making fucking Crawl. So no, no. I've already had this conversation before. But we have some amazing birthdays that happened this week.
We do. So the first one on our list is Guillermo del Toro, if I can pronounce it.
Guillermo
del Toro.
Guillermo.
Wow.
Yeah, he was born October 9th, 1964.
I love this director. He is one of my inspirations.
He is amazing in terms of his use of color, his use of art direction, especially in Hellboy 2, Golden Army. I still want a Hellboy 3.
Oh,
I won't.
Pan's Labyrinth?
Pan's Labyrinth?
Oh my god, Pan's Labyrinth got me. That was a fairy tale for adults. God, I still watch that movie. I mean, it spoke to me like Labyrinth or like Dark Crystal spoke to me.
His ability to create an entire world. That's what's fascinating. Even though on some things it's like a snippet, like you can take Hellboy and you picture it being part of something bigger, even though we don't necessarily see what's bigger. It's a part of something bigger, and it's amazing.
I absolutely love all of his work. It was his one of his first ones. There was Kronos, which was a magnificent vampire film that I thought was just a brilliant take on the vampire story with the clockwork device. And there was another one. I remember that the title was in Spanish. It was really early on, Devil's Backbone, about the kids in the orphanage.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, yeah, Devil's Backbone is fantastic. Kronos, obviously, is one of my absolute favorites. Mimic, which I don't care what anybody says. Mimic, Mira Sorvino, and Charles motherfucking S. Dutton. That movie was amazing. And, the puppetry in that and the world that he created in that was brilliant. Then he was behind Mama. He was behind, Crimson Peak. Shape of Water.
I would say Shape of Water. Yeah, one best picture.
Which I think is just he wanted to tell an Abe Sapien centric story, which is pretty much what that was. But because I think I've heard in interviews that Abe Sapien was his favorite character of the Hellboy series. Is that he loved doing the Fishman, and then of course we have Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark coming out. I mean, come on, I think all 3 of us grew up with those books.
Nope.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, God, Floyd, don't make me feel older than I am.
Alex, I'm old. I just didn't grow up with the books.
Now, every time Alex makes me feel old as shit because he's 10 years younger than I am. So he was like, I'm sitting here going, oh, I remember when this went down in 1991, and Alex is like, I was still a toddler. Like, great.
I was 5.
But yes, happy birthday, Guillermo del Toro.
1991. It's not good.
Who else do we have?
Oh, we also have Sir Charles Dance, October 10th, 1946. Man, that is old, but aged like a fine wine. And my man, I like the guy quite simply because he was a Lannister in Game of Thrones, and he wasn't just a Lannister. He was Big Papa Lannister, who got shot on the toilet by a little baby Lannister, and he was still a G when he went down. So, talking about a man who skins an animal while having a deep, intimate conversation about how much his son is an idiot. Okay, this is a great man. He was also in Alien 3. What else? Underworld, Awakening, Dracula Untold, Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies.
He was off the hook in Dracula Untold. I that movie. The movie didn't really strike, but he was fucking amazing as the vampire in the cave that turns Vlad.
Doesn't that suck when your movie's not that good, but your performance is awesome?
He was awesome. I thought he was fantastic.
I feel like this happened to him quite a few times because he has a great camera presence.
Oh yeah. Okay, I mean, going back to Game of Thrones, Tywin Lannister. I think that this one of the standout scenes is when Joffrey is on the throne and just running his fucking mouth, and Tywin's doing that slow approach where he's walking up to the throne, just all leisure, just totally casual.
Mm-hmm.
No propriety. No, not even a whim of, oh, I know you're the king. Fuck that. You're my bullshit grandson who has this fucking throne out of sheer chance. And no, I'm not intimidated by you. Not fucking scare me. And just standing him, not yelling, just hands behind the back, and that fucking look he gives him. Oh, love it.
Oh yeah,
it's the look from that movie with Tom Hanks in it. It said, "Look at me, I'm the captain now."
I'm the captain now. he has one of my favorite lines when they're sitting there in the small council, right? And he's the one that says, "Any man who has to say he's a king is no king."
Is no king, yes.
And that says it right there.
That sucks. I tell people I'm the king all the time.
I'm sorry to tell you, Floyd.
You don't have to.
I got some bad news for you.
Tywin doesn't think you're a king.
It's okay. I respect him, so I'm fine with that.
But a major happy birthday to Sir Charles Dance.
Happy birthday, Sir Charles.
Hope to see a lot more from him.
Darwin.
And then also this week, another amazing birthday. Happy birthday to Ed Wood Jr., October 10th, 1924. The man behind The Plan was born. Lord,
yes.
If there was ever an inspiration for everything that Troma Studios put out, it was this man right here.
He was like one of the best things to happen to movies, and then no one knew it at the time.
Oh, he was next level ahead of his time. I don't think I don't think mainstream audiences didn't get a taste for him or didn't even really have an idea who he was until that Tim Burton movie came out.
Yeah, because most of his stuff would sat on shelves.
Yeah,
and you never even heard of him. And what's really interesting is now, only in a couple of recent years, we're starting to get that bad movie cult. The people who are looking for the Birdemic in The Room and stuff. And so when you look at Plan 9 from Outer Space or Glenn and Glenda, something like that, people are now starting to research and starting to find some of these old classic movies and watching them again.
I thought as far as director, yeah, like I said, he inspiring the likes of Lloyd Kaufman and the guys behind Troma Films, Toxic Avenger, Nuke 'Em High, shit like that, and doing the absolute most you can with the bare fucking minimum, simply because you were given an opportunity. But if anybody believed in what he was doing, it was Ed Wood. You could see that while terribly crafted, the love went into the terrible craftsmanship. And that this guy could see opportunity in virtually anything. It's if you give him just give him something, he'd be like, I can turn this into something. And you talk about a guy with the imagination like that. Imagine if someone like Ed Wood Jr. with that level of intensity and dedication and love and passion for the medium had access to the resources that are available today.
Oh yeah,
the stories he could tell.
The computer technology and digital film and stuff like that. And he's somebody who motivates me because he is somebody that he went out and made a film. Out of all the people out there that are talking about wanted to be in movies, wanted to be in film, or something like that. He just went out and made it happen. And I know, as like a Plan 9 from Outer Space, I think a church sponsored it. They put money down into it, and that's why he had to. The original name was something like Invaders from Outer Space or something, but the church thought it was too risque or too controversial for the name, so he changed it to Plan 9 from Outer Space. But when you get a church to back a movie about an alien invasion, you got to give him props on that.
Yep. Just like Trauma, like Kaufman over at Trauma gets his funding from dentists is one of his key, because he finds that dentists seem to love movies, and they all have disposable income. So he has like a group of dentists that he is like big time friends with that pretty much fund everything that Trauma ever put out. So, and he did a lot of guerrilla stuff like Ed Wood did, where we said, we don't necessarily have the permits to shoot here, but we're going to do it anyway.
We're going to do it, make the best of it. We need an airplane cockpit. We're going to build some out of cardboard.
Bingo. It's in black and white. They'll never tell. But yes, happy birthday, Ed Wood Jr. Where would we be without you? Probably nowhere. He inspired so many that came after him, from the likes of Lloyd Kaufman, Tim Burton, various other top-notch talent. So happy birthday to him. And sadly, we have something sad that happened this week.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's not good. We're going to send out press F for respects, to pay respects to Christopher Reeve. My man died October 10th, 2004. I had just graduated high school. He's a great man. Good old Soups. Started the curse. Fell off the horse. It's not good, but rest in peace, Christopher Reeve. Great man.
Well, we wouldn't say yes, but Christopher Reeve, the original, the best Superman in my personal opinion. But I think the curse started with George Reeve.
Yeah, but he's old, so.
Well, yeah, like that. But I remember, I remember him. One of the last films he did before he had his accident was he did a remake of Village of the Damned.
Oh yeah,
and he was outstanding in that remake. He was really fucking good, and it was surprising how good he was, and what a damn shame that it wasn't. It was being, I think, his last movie before his accident, that this guy, that Christopher Reeve, the man, he didn't have to play the good guy all the time, or the upbeat handsome protagonist. This guy could hold a horror film in his own right. Yeah, he could play that psychological fear extremely well, and it's so sad that we only got that one film right before he had to stop making movies, and that was such a bummer.
Yeah,
because he was fucking good in that movie. He carried that film and made it excellent. But man, that was a shame when we lost him.
It was too, because now it's always a question of like, what if? What if the accident never happened? Maybe he could have become a staple horror villain. There's so many possibilities. He could be running for an Oscar or something like that now.
Yeah,
with his acting ability.
If he had the years to put into his career, where it could have gone. Well, it bums me out speculating like that. He was such an enormous talent. Richard Donner struck gold when he cast him. Superman 3 was a little iffy, but Superman 4 was even worse. But 1 and 2, yeah, absolutely amazing stuff, especially the Donner cut. But yeah, I loved those movies. So, God, he was so fucking good.
It sucks when you have such a large talent pool that doesn't really get tapped into. Happened to Heath Ledger. A few good movies. One really, 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 really amazing performance as a character most people said he shouldn't be playing. And then he's dead. It's like, wait.
Yeah, because he knocked the Joker out of the park.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah.
And the greats always go way too soon. So, rest in peace, Christopher Reeve. We remember you fondly.
We do. Rest in peace.
And on that sober note, that wraps Week in Horror, October 6th through October 12th. We want to thank you so much, all you wonderful listeners, for checking us out. We truly hope that you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it. Please be sure to subscribe to us here on SoundCloud, or follow us at facebook.com/weekinhorror to get your daily splatter, which is a bit of horror entertainment history every single day. And of course, any future updates that we have regarding Week in Horror. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you guys tuning in. Check back next week for another show.
Yeah, once again, I'm Eugene. Thank you so much for listening, and come back next week.
And I'm JL. We will see you on the next one.